Welcome to Around and Around, the OCD Circle. My name is Elizabeth, and I have been living with obsessive compulsive disorder for over 60 years. I am not a therapist or a member of the medical community. I am just an ordinary person like yourself who will be sharing my thoughts and experiences with you, with the hope that you will feel less alone. If you don't have OCD, I hope you will learn some information that will help you understand this disorder better. Some of the topics I will be covering may be triggering for you as a listener. If so, I apologize in advance. Since I don't know what your triggers are, please refer to the episode summary in the show notes before listening to each episode. If at any time you feel like hurting yourself or ending your life, please call the 988 Suicide and Crisis Lifeline by dialing 988 if you are in the United States. It is open 24 hours a day, and you will be connected with the nearest crisis center to receive immediate counseling and local mental health referrals. Now, on to today's episode. Welcome to Around and Around the OCD Circle podcast. In today's episode, I speak with Matthew Cypcar, who was diagnosed with obsessive compulsive disorder at the age of 15. Matt says that it all started with perfectionism at school. He told me that telling his story today was like a session of ERP, and he was appreciative of the chance to share his journey with each of you. Hello, Matt.
Hey, how you doing?
Fine. Can I call you Matt? Is that all right?
Yeah. That's
Okay,
all
good.
good. Yeah.
Okay, good. So why don't you tell us a little bit about, like where you were raised, where you are now,
Sure.
located?
Sure. So my name is Matthew. I'm 29 years old. I was born and raised in New Jersey. I currently reside in New Jersey. Yeah, and I could go into a little bit about myself,
Mm-hmm. Well,
Yeah, so
yeah, so we're here to talk about OCD, so you can start wherever you'd like, or just from the beginning.
yeah, so a little bit about myself and my OCD was like I really started with perfectionism, and that like really happened around like age, I want to say 14 was when it really came about, at least from what I remember. And a lot of it came about with like schoolwork, just feeling like I needed to have a perfect understanding of whatever I read, whatever I studied. So I would just, when it came to like novels and stuff for school, I would have to reread passages and until it felt right, until I felt like I like fully understood it,
Mm-hmm.
which would I remember I read this book for school. It was like based off Hiroshima. So I read that book and it took me forever to get through it, but sometimes it would take me like 15 minutes to get through 2 pages of that novel because I would have to reread and kind of until it felt right. And at that age, I didn't really know why I was doing it because it was like I was first, learning about OCD and everything. I wasn't even like, I was really diagnosed at 15 though.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I want to say from there, a lot of that perfectionism, like it took on different forms. Like from perfectionism, it went onto like cleaning. So I felt like I had to clean my hands because I had a fear of spreading like germs, bodily fluid, blood. I just, I felt like I had to clean it like and re-clean it until it felt right. So I'd say a lot of times I would just clean it to the point where I just like my hands would be so dry and just chapped. Like, so the winters were just terrible because my hands would get cracked and it kind of kept the cycle going because my hands would sometimes bleed. It would be that awful, uh, because of my fears. Uh, it's just interesting because it jumped from like it wasn't as drastic, but it like took on different forms. Like, and I'd say from there, like it kind of like took on like driving. So for a while I was driving, just like I would drive, but I would have these fears going on in the back of my mind, like, and they were just unwanted thoughts. I just couldn't help it. But I would think, what if I just, what if I caused an accident? What if, what if I did something that just like brought on an accident? Like I caught someone off guard, like that was walking on the street. If I caught another driver off guard, and I would literally circle back, and I would have to revisit that same location and make sure that everything was good, that like no one was hurt, and it kept going and going I kind of until I thought I felt some relief, but it just keeps the cycle going once you feed it. That's I really think from there, I mean, I've always had like that part of me with harm OCD where kind of it's difficult to kind of wrap my head around, because it's like it's totally against just my morals as a person,
Mm-hmm.
and I feel like OCD attacks that kind of stuff. Like it like it like feeds on what you value most, like just other people and connection with other people, and it'll try to take what it can from you.
Mm-hmm.
um
That's the
yeah.
difference between being crazy and having OCD. You know that this
Hmm,
isn't
hmm.
logical, that
Exactly.
you would never hurt anyone intentionally, or
Hmm,
that you're a
hmm.
careful driver,
Yes,
and
exactly.
that's how you know.
Yeah, so it was I had a lot of it was really like tough, a lot of years. Like, unfortunately, it got so bad that I just stopped driving. I was like, I can't, like, these thoughts are just so, like, they're taking over, and I just can't deal with it. So for a while I gave up driving, and that was my way of I just kind of gave into the OCD, and which at the time I felt like was my only option,
How old were you at that
unfortunately.
time? How old were you when you stopped driving for a while?
I want to say that was while I was in mm, while I was in college. Well, I took a break from college. I think I was around 20. I want to say around like 23, because I came in and out of college. I had to take a break from college.
Well, that's very inconvenient. How did you get around? Did you take a bus or walk, or what did you do?
I mean, to be honest, I had to rely a lot on my family to take me places, and I'd say it kind of felt like, I don't know, it was a little like embarrassing, because it's like I relied so much on driving. It was a big part of how I got around everywhere, and so I would, just rely on them. Actually, when I returned back to school, it's funny because I still relied on them to kind of take me to some classes. Like, I started off slow, and I still relied on them to kind of bring me there and back, because I was commuting. Well, they were helping me commute.
Mm-hmm. So how did your family react to all this?
They were very they were very supportive of my OCD. I would just say they didn't like they had trouble like understanding a lot of it because like one of the common things that they've like told me in the past was like you know just don't worry about it. Nothing bad like nothing bad will happen. They kind of reassured me like that it was okay. And I mean I can't blame them. I think that's like a natural thing we all want to, like, if someone's struggling, you want to reassure them that everything's okay.
Mm-hmm.
um I just think they didn't know that it was making things worse. But obviously they
Everything wasn't
weren't.
okay.
Yeah. That's definitely true. So but they were very supportive. They tried the best to understand what I'm going through and just listen to, like, try to listen to like what I had to say and kind of like let me speak my mind.
So what led up to you being diagnosed at 15? Did they suggest for you to go see a doctor, or?
So actually, like the school system that I was in, I had like a case manager that I think she was in contact with my mom, and they they knew that I was like, because I was like really anxious, like I was in a lot of distress, and I I feel like the caseworker knew something was up, and they kind of knew it was OCD based off a lot of the stuff that I was doing, which I don't know, I was kind of shocked, but like just that there would be that general understanding, because me and myself, I didn't even know what was really going on at that age. But yeah, that's how I kind of like went to a psychiatrist, and I was
That would have been in
finally
the mid
diagnosed.
2000s, correct?
Yes, or somewhere around there. Yeah.
Well, that's great. She was doing her job, and that means she was knowledgeable, and that's good to know that there was someone in the school there that knew what was going on. You don't always have that luxury in a school system.
Exactly.
Oh.
Exactly. I feel like a lot of times I feel like that's one of the things with school systems that's kind of like just mental health is something that that's not always given attention to.
Mm-hmm.
If like there's not a lot of awareness about it, and I'm sure like a lot of people care about it. I mean, mental wellness is important, but it's kind of hard for people to wrap your head around it.
That's right. And I'm a former teacher, and I'll tell you, it's even worse in the private schools because they don't want to rock the boat. They don't want to say anything that's going to get you to take your child out of their school and get special help because they need that tuition.
Oh yeah. I'm
They
sure of
just
it.
put up with anything and put band-aids on problems instead of letting parents know. Sometimes, I'm not saying all private schools, but the ones that I taught in, tuition was the big deal. You didn't rock the boat.
Yeah, and it's really unfortunate, but that's how it is sometimes.
So what did they do for you at 15?
So like when I went to a psychiatrist, I recall it being started off. I think it was on like a small dose of Zoloft, some medication. They started me off on Zoloft. I remember while taking the Zoloft, well, actually from the perspective of my parents, they thought that it was making me very like nonchalant, like almost like I wasn't like, I was kind of like carefree and stuff like that. But I don't really recall if it made me feel much better, but it was just something that I was trying I was just trying, to see if it would help a little bit. So I just took the medication, and I recall going into therapy, which at such a young age, it's like it's like how do you even like process that? Like I went into therapy. I remember I had a therapist that actually had OCD, so it was really actually like
Wow.
interesting to actually like went through that I felt like I could kind of like relate with. And I just remember sitting in therapy, and a lot of times it was like kind of like that talking part, just like talking through what I was going through. And I remember playing board games, and it's like it just felt like I mean it felt cool. It felt having that like connection, because you know how OCD can definitely make you feel like very like withdrawn
Mm-hmm.
from like just like society in itself, and it can be very like isolating. So I mean, I felt like it was pretty cool, but it helped for a little bit, but it wasn't. I didn't really feel like it's what I needed in
Mm-hmm.
terms of help.
Mm-hmm. So then what happened?
Um. So from that point, I remember as I as I progressed through high school, I mean I mean things just got worse and worse. Unfortunately, I just struggled to make it to school on time. Like a lot of times, I would come into school, it'd be like an hour late, maybe like an hour and a half late.
Because you've been washing your hands?
Oh, yeah, yeah. I would be like washing my hands. A lot of times it would be with showering too. I would just be like in the shower just scrubbing my body. It would be on top of that, I had a little bit of that perfectionism too. I was still kind of holding on to. So my clothes had to like fit a certain way, and I would have to like when putting them on, I would have to kind of like put it on, take it off, put it on, take it off.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I didn't even like it was. I don't really at that time. I didn't really understand the fear behind that in itself, the perfectionism aspect with the clothes, but fitting a certain way. But it just kind of start to spiral and take up too much of my mental capacity. Like I felt like I could barely function and get through school
Mm-hmm.
without a lot of extra support, a lot of extensions on work that I had to complete. Like I had like a plan set in place where like it's kind of like an ISP, or I'm not sure what you would consider it, not ISP, but I just had stuff in place where it kind of catered to a lot of what I was dealing with extra extensions for work.
Mm-hmm. Did it affect your friendships?
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, I would say it did affect my friendships very, very much so, and even my ability to make. I mean, just making friendships was hard because I was just so in my head constantly and
Mm-hmm.
so anxious that I mean, for a while, I didn't even like put a priority on just meeting and making relationships with other people. Like I
Mm-hmm.
felt like a piece of me wanted that, but just with how much I was suffering and the stuff that I was going through, um, it was just always kind of secondary for the longest time.
Mm-hmm. So we are now at what age? We're high school.
Yeah, so like high school, at the very tail end of high school was when I decided to really seek out intensive treatment. And by intensive treatment, I meant like going out of state, kind of like to unfamiliar territory, like going like inpatient inpatient facilities, trying to seek out help. I visited McLean, so I went to McLean Hospital um, at the very. Actually, it was at the very tail end of high school. I didn't even go to my graduation. I was in McLean
Wow.
Hospital, um, trying to get better, trying to implement all the therapy that they were trying to teach me, and just fighting all the fears that I had, you know.
Mhm. Did it help you being hospitalized?
It definitely helped me. Like I would say McLean was a very huge part of how I got better. Um the people there are just like amazing, from everyone, from the clinicians to the staff that like would help with therapy. It was honestly very it was a great experience, but it was also very like difficult. Like I'm not gonna say like, oh, it was such a lovely experience, I
A
was
lot of
there,
work,
like
wasn't it?
yeah,
It's
yeah,
a lot of
yeah,
work.
like yeah, I was, going through it felt like I was going through hell, but at the same time, with that supportive cast, it felt very comforting, just having someone to lean on. And
How long were you there for?
I was there for, I would say, like 2 months.
Okay.
Yeah, I was there for 2 months, and I was working on exposure response prevention, so like ERP.
I was going to say, figured that was part of it.
Yeah, yeah, it was a huge part of like just my everyday, um, like every day on the schedule there was like exposure response prevention, ERP, for like a set amount of hours. And
Oh, that's intense.
yeah, it definitely was intense, and also setting up the treatment plan, because obviously there was a lot of stuff to tackle, so I had like different I had different things to work on. So, and there was a lot of adjusting, like, and figuring out like what would trigger my anxiety like the most, and just sitting with that anxiety. And yeah, ERP is definitely a interesting therapy that a lot of people aren't. Um, I mean, even some people with OCD, they aren't aware of it. Like they don't know it exists, and a
Mhm.
lot of people, the general public, do not. Um,
That's true.
yeah, do not know much about it, but it really benefited me a lot.
Yeah, I was going to say, I see a lot on the boards people talking about it, and they'll
Hmm.
say, I want to do it, but I'm just too afraid. And what you're
That's
saying is it was worth everything.
it was literally worth everything, and a lot of those like people that post that, like that was me. That was me a while back. Like I had the exact same like fears. There were times that I literally had to. There's times where I literally had to be like, like I would be doing an ERP and I just had to walk away. I'm just like, just too much. I had to like regroup. I had to like give myself a little like break, and I had to tackle it again. Like,
For people that don't know what
you know,
it is, can you give an example of an exercise that you would have done?
yeah, totally. So I just want to say like probably one example, like, well, ERP, I mean, like basically is just, exposing yourself to the feared anxiety that you have, like the feared obsession. So like I remember with me, I tackled a lot of my driving, fears and fears of like unwanted fears like that I could hurt someone. So with ERP, they would just have me, drive around, and the big piece of the therapy was just not engaging in my rituals, or not trying to relieve that anxiety that I was feeling, because that was what OCD is. We want to do the rituals, we want to relieve that anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
So they wanted me to stick with that anxiety without doing the rituals. So
right,
my anxiety would go through the roof. I'd be like sitting there, like, I'm
that's
like,
the
oh my
scary
god,
part.
like,
That's
yeah,
the scary part.
it's the scary part. Like,
Mm-hmm.
literally when your anxiety that's high, when it's that high, you like feel like it's do or die. Like, it's like that's how it can feel when anxiety is so bad. But I found, and they taught me that after a while, the anxiety would come down, and sometimes it would take like a long time before it came down, but it did come down to something where I could manage it, like kind of be able to manage it. I got through the exposure, so then next time we, would do the kind of like similar exposure, like same kind of process, my anxiety would go up, 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 but then like I felt that it didn't kind of like peak as high as it did like the first time.
Mm-hmm.
It would still be like high, so I would just kind of sit with it, sit with it, sit with it. Then, it would come down like it did the first time. Just like every time I kept doing that exposure, like eventually it got to the point where I was feeling a very small amount of anxiety, and it was literally like the best feeling, like, when you can tackle something and just get through it, and it doesn't literally affect you as much as it did. It kind of is like you're regaining your life back, and essentially, from these fears. But it's very, very, very hard work. But it's something that, like, I don't regret like ever doing ERP. I don't.
That's awesome.
Mhm.
So where are you today in your life as far as your OCD? And
So today, I'll be completely honest here. Like, I I do still struggle with OCD. I feel like it will always be a part of me. I mean, there's no cure for OCD. I mean, that's what a lot of people like need to understand. Like, that don't have OCD. There's no like cure. Like, but so it still affects me, but it doesn't. It kind of like it's kind of like a wave, It's kind of like how it affected me back then. It was like really, really bad, and then I had a period where I was doing really, really good. I was literally taking a small dose or just one dose of Prozac, and I was able to just get through my day. I was able to, I didn't have all those fears like attached to me. I felt like a weight was lifted off me. Today, I will admit I do struggle. I do find that some of the thoughts are kind of like trying to creep its way back in, some of the fears, and a lot of it is based off the fact that I'm truly trying to be vulnerable. And by vulnerable, I mean like seek out like a lot of social connections with people, seek out more so than I ever previously did. So seeking out more social connections, and just really putting myself out there, which I did find OCD is trying to be a little bit sneaky and trying to be like, oh, okay, we can work with that. So like it's good that you're doing that, but it's like it'll always have that like kind of like I have that fear that's running in the background, like these like fears, especially even just sharing my story today is just it's like one big huge ERP for me. It's like essentially is one big huge ERP because it's something I want to do so bad, and I want to help a lot of people, but there's that fear behind it that's like,
and you're doing great.
Yeah, I appreciate that, but it's that fear that's like behind it. That's like, I mean, I kind of make fun of it sometimes, but it's like that fear in the back of my head that's like, oh man, you're sharing your story. I think people are going to start to leave your life. They're going to discover, all your fears, all your, everything that's going on. They're going to be like, yeah, like they're just not going to want to be in your life anymore. And it's like, it's extremely frustrating to have to deal with that, like uncertainty. But I mean, just like with ERP, I mean, I just have to push through the uncertainty. I can't be like, I'm not gonna like reassure myself, oh, yeah, everything's gonna be okay. I mean, it would be nice to, but just sitting with that uncertainty, like, oh yeah, I mean,
is this something that you don't share with others much?
For a while, I did not. For a while, I did not. I did to various degrees with some people, like family know about it. Family know about it. Some of my friends do to an extent, but it's just really just sitting with that uncertainty. Like, okay, people may want to leave my life, and I mean, it's just like okay, thought, all right.
It's 2024,
I mean,
like.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and it's all fear. It's all fear-based OCD. So,
and that's part of what I'm doing this podcast for is people who don't have OCD. I'm hoping if they listen, they'll understand it a little bit more. What we go through. And
yeah,
I ask this of every one of my guests, Matt. How do you feel when people in general say, oh, I'm so OCD today about this? How does that make you feel? Does it bother you, or is it okay? Is it just, you just let it go?
I have so many mixed opinions about this. So a part of me, it does bother me. A part of me, it really does bother me because like there's so much like, even in the media, there's so much like, I feel like OCD is just like seen as a quirk. Like, oh, it's like this little cute thing. It's like, oh, you want to fix these things, be perfect, and like all that stuff. But I don't know. I just feel like OCD is kind of like the real nitty gritty, and the severe OCD doesn't really get the attention and the light that it deserves. It's so. I mean, it's a little frustrating because it's like it's like you hear someone say that. Meanwhile, you're going through OCD, or like you have severe, or you know what it's like to be severely compromised by this disorder, and it's like, well, I mean, I don't think you have it, but I mean, but but also, I I come at it from also the other side of things. It's like a lot of it is just not not having that knowledge behind it. It's just like just kind of like a lot of society just doesn't know what OCD is
Yeah.
really.
That's why we need to
And
educate them.
yeah, what it's really about. That's why education is so important, so important. And I feel like this podcast is like a perfect platform for like just just educating people. It's very important, and I wish there was. I mean, I've seen quite a bit of OCD podcasts and quite a bit of OCD content on YouTube and stuff like that. I just feel like the we've made so much progress in OCD, like from let's say from like the '90s.
Mhm.
Like, and when I look back at it, I'm like, I mean, and I was just like a little kid, but when I look back at like the uh, look back and I read some of the stuff and some of the research that was done and how things have changed so much, and I don't know, it's honestly awesome to see that a lot of people are willing to share their story, and just having podcasts like these are massively important.
Mhm.
Really it is.
Yeah, I wasn't diagnosed till I was over 35, probably
Mm,
almost 40. I lived
mm,
for that long before anyone could actually tell me what I had. So
mm.
I'm glad
It's
that they found. Did you notice any symptoms before the age of 14, Matt, or did your family? Or this started, right? It just started at 14, or uh
uh so so I felt like a little bit beforehand. I kind of It's kind of like very interesting because kind of growing up, I was always very emotional.
mhm,
And I know, well, so I was kind of like that emotional when I like grew up. Like I had a very close knit relationship with my mom and dad.
mhm,
But I remember at one point when my mom and dad would work separate shifts. So they would go into work, and I'd during the weekdays, I'd essentially see one of them, only one of them. So I felt like that kind of, because sometimes they discuss how like I wouldn't like, I don't know if I want to term it as like trauma exactly, but it's something that kind of like upset me. I remember,
mhm.
being upset about it. I remember being emotional about it. Like even like when one of my parents used to leave, I used to uh, like pull out the driveway. I would like tear up. Like it would literally be that much. There would be so much emotion driven behind it. So I kind of felt like that, kind of like in a way triggered something, but I don't know for sure because based off of what I know that sometimes there could be something like trauma that could trigger it. Sometimes there's a lot. Sometimes it could just be genetics.
Right. Do
I
you
mean,
have anyone in your else in
genetics.
your family that has it that you know of?
Uh, yeah. So my mom does experience some OCD, but
Mhm.
to a very minor degree.
Okay.
At least that's what she has discussed with me. The very minor OCD.
I feel like my paternal grandfather probably had OCD.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. it's
But a different type than I had, but it doesn't matter. It's not always
yeah,
genetic. Sometimes
yeah, yeah.
there's no reasoning for it. Our brains are wired differently, and
Hmm.
I think depending on stress, trauma, times of your life, it can just become full blown. Mine became full blown at the age of 32, but I
Oh,
still
wow.
had it in elementary school. But my behaviors were different in elementary school than they were when I was 32. It was totally different the way I dealt with it.
Mm. Yeah, just the aspect of how it can kind of shift from one form to
Hmm.
another.
Hmm.
I mean, I've known, and I've seen it happen with other people, but I just like it's a very interesting concept, and I'm really into psychology and stuff like that. Like, I went to school like studying psychology as an
Oh,
undergrad, and so kind of OCD was my I felt like kind of like it was kind of my drive to kind of like I want to help people, and want to I definitely want to spread like awareness to about OCD, you know.
right. Trying to think if there's anything else I haven't asked you. Is there anything else that you want to talk about? Well, I mean,
Um,
are you in any treatment now? Any medications or treatment?
so I am in treatment right now. So I just meet with a therapist. It's kind of like every like biweekly, and I do so I do like discuss like a lot of the stuff that's going on. Sometimes I feel like it can be complicated because OCD I kind of have OCD, but I also have depression.
Hmm.
So just kind of that comorbid, in itself, can complicate things because it's always like, what do you need to tackle one thing first, kind of. But and I do go to therapy biweekly. I do. I am on. I'm actually on Prozac right now. I got back onto it, and I'm on a small dose currently. Um,
That was the drug that
must,
helped me the most, I think.
yeah. So for me, I felt like kind of like a similar situation. It helped me quite a bit. I mean, I really like for my OCD, I was maxing out at around like 60 or 80 milligrams, somewhere around that, and I felt like it would benefit me. Like, it just benefited me a lot. Um, I know um, everyone is differently responds to medication. I've
Mhm.
actually done some like gene testing, which I thought was interesting because this was a while back, but I was kind of able to see which medications work best for me in terms of my genes. Um,
Oh, interesting.
yeah, I think it's called like Gene Site or Gen Site or something like that.
Hmm.
So I think that could be of value to anyone
Hmm.
that's struggling with OCD and kind of trying to tackle it with both therapy and medication
Yeah, you have to.
simultaneously.
I always tell my listeners, don't go by what Matt and I are saying about medicine.
Oh
Everyone's
yeah, yeah.
metabolism is different. Everyone reacts
Hmm.
differently. You may have to try many, many medications before you find works for you. We're just talking about our experience with Prozac. I've tried them all. I always went
Oh yeah.
back to Prozac. I think it helped me have a more even uh, emotional state, which in that way lessened my stress, lessened my depression, lessened my anxiety, and that all that wrapped together helped my OCD. But I've been on so many different things, and I'm currently med free right now. I've been med free for about 6 years, but I know there's going to be a time in my life when I'm going to need to go back on it, and my first choice is going to be what I was most successful at, and that's Prozac. But then, 10 years from now, Prozac may not work for me. So
Yeah.
then I have to start all over. I can tell you what doesn't work for me, like Boost Bar. I got double vision with that stuff. And I was playing softball at the time, and I would see 2 softballs coming at my face. And I mean, I had to get off that stuff right away. Other people love it,
Yeah, so it's very it's very dependent. What works for one person might not work for another person. So it's very important to have like a good communication with your psychiatrist, and just being totally transparent, even as hard. It's very challenging, but just being totally transparent and saying like, I don't think this is working, and just and just being like totally honest, because like we view psychiatrists as always having, like, obviously they have the training, but they rely on us to kind of guide them, kind of like, so it's like, is it working, is it not working, what do you think could improve? So it's very just having a psychiatrist that has some kind of like track history with OCD. Therapist too, it's very important having a therapist that
they can't
has
help
track
you
history.
unless you're honest with them.
Yes.
There's no way they can help you. You're wasting their time and yours and your money.
Exactly. I completely agree with you on that one.
I wanted to change the subject for a minute because you have what seems like contamination OCD for the most part. How did you respond to COVID?
So with I want to say with COVID though, it wasn't actually, surprisingly for me, it wasn't actually too bad.
Okay,
And
well, I know that doesn't make sense, but I did interview another gentleman named Agis, and he said the same thing. He said that his OCD is more for things that don't make sense. So he would be worried that he would get AIDS, or he would get hepatitis, or but something that was real. But our heart, he was worried he was going to have a heart attack. But something that was real, that was happening, he didn't worry about as much. It was the things that were not logical.
That you nailed the hammer on the head with that one, because just for a while, that's like a perfect description of me, because just like with the previous guest, for a long time I had a fear of HIV, fear of AIDS, and it really just started when I was, I had a job as a lifeguard, and I would have to perform like sometimes like first aid and stuff like that, like very minor cuts, stuff like that. But that triggered a lot in me, and I was super careful. I would I was super careful. I would wash my hands. I would, wash my hands a bunch of times. Do all the precautions necessary to keep myself safe. The thoughts, unfortunately, they're not always, I mean, they're not rational. They're not rational at the end of the day. And that was,
Well, I think you'd really relate to him. So if you have a chance, go back and listen. His interview was in 2 episodes, and he has you and he have a lot in common as far as your symptoms and things like that. I think you would really relate to him. Is there anything else we haven't talked about that you want to bring up?
I mean, I felt like we talked about a lot of great stuff.
We did.
Like we got we got a lot of great stuff that we talked about.
And you're always
I,
welcome to come back anytime. If you think of a topic that you really think needs to be discussed, you can just contact me. I've had a couple of
mhm,
guests who have come back on a second time and said, I really want to talk about this, or I want to, and you're always welcome to come
mhm.
back anytime. And I usually ask you at the end if you have any words of wisdom that you can give to our listeners to give them some hope. Um,
Mhm. So, in terms of words of wisdom, so I mean, my biggest like words of wisdom. I mean, I felt like I touched base on it a little bit earlier, but like if you're listening and you have been diagnosed with OCD or you see a lot of the signs, I mean, it's important to get the diagnosis part, but ERP, if you've not given ERP a try, it's something that you should definitely consider. And even if you've gone through the therapy and you fell out, like it was just too difficult, I feel like it's definitely important to consider it again. And but I think it's important to go into therapy. Like you don't have to go in guns blazing. Like you don't have to go in guns blazing and like tackle every huge fear that you have at once. Like you want to feel obviously discomfort, like when you're working through the therapy, but at if you try to tackle everything at once, and it's just it's gonna be very difficult. It's gonna go by really difficult for you, and I feel like there has to be some kind of balance balance with that. Like you don't want to get so discouraged that you end up just giving up completely on therapy, but you also want to challenge yourself. You really do want to challenge yourself. I
mhm.
mean, that's the point of
And a good a good
ERP.
therapist a good therapist will help you do that.
Oh yeah, yeah. A
And
good therapist will definitely outline, and go through that with you for sure.
and if you don't, and I've said this before, and I know my listeners probably get tired of hearing it, but if you get into therapy and you don't feel like it's helping you, it's not a problem to just change. Go somewhere
Hmm.
else. It's
Yeah.
not, you don't have to be embarrassed about that, because I stayed in therapy for 11 years with someone who wasn't helping me at all. She was a super nice person, and she sat there and agreed with me for everything I said and did, but
Hmm.
it was not helping me at all. She didn't challenge me. It was too
Yeah.
easy, in other words. And by the time I realized she wasn't helping me, it had been 11 years of my life. I had given her, um, you know,
Yeah. Yes. So I 100% agree with that because I feel like there's been times where I've gone through therapy and I've felt kind of like that lull in the action where it's like I really, I think me and the therapist had like a very good bond, and they were awesome, very super supportive, and just things were going, pretty good. But there's a part of me, it's like, well, I don't feel challenged, and part of it's also like kind of landed on me because but like a part of it's like maybe just the dynamics not working, and it's okay to seek out other therapists. It's because at the end of the day, it's your life, and honestly, you can't feel so like entitled, like, oh, I may hurt their feelings. I mean,
right.
it's like they want to see you get better too. I mean, they've been working with you, like,
Hmm.
um so at the end of the day, it's just you have to do what's in your best interest, to regain your sense of control.
That's right. And that's part of self love.
Hmm.
So,
Yes, yes.
well, I appreciate you joining me today, Matt. It's been a pleasure meeting you and listening to your story. And um, like I said, you're welcome to come back anytime.
Yeah, I thank you so much for having me on this podcast. I really do appreciate everything that you're doing, and just spreading the knowledge. And I'd love to come back one day and kind of
Just
share
let
my
me know.
progress.
Okay.
Alrighty.
Uh, thank you. I hope you enjoyed today's conversation with Matthew Cypcar and that it helped you feel less alone. Today's episode will be the last episode of the season. I hope to be back with you soon for season 2. If you feel led to tell your OCD story, please reach out to me at my social media links below. Remember that OCD, while it cannot be cured, can be managed, and I am living proof of that. Until next time, have a great summer.